communication begins long before words form. It begins in the mind's interpretations, the nervous system's reactions, and the emotional memory stored from years of lived experience. Most people assume communication issues stem from the surface, tone, phrasing, timing, but the real source lives deeper. It lives in the parts of you that learned, long ago, what connection felt like, what safety required, and what emotional expression cost. Every person communicates through a framework shaped by past experiences. When someone raises their voice, goes quiet, interrupts, withdraws, or suddenly feels flooded, that response is not chosen in the moment. It is activated. The body recognizes patterns before the conscious mind interprets them. A tone of disappointment may resemble an earlier experience. A moment of silence may resemble rejection. A misunderstanding may resemble past criticism. The reaction appears instantly because the emotional system is working from memory, not the present context. This internal landscape is built from schemas, imprints, and conditioned emotional responses. These patterns form in environments where the child had to interpret others quickly to stay connected or avoid conflict. A child who learned to soothe others may become an adult who overexplains. A child who learned to stay invisible may become an adult who shuts down during tension. A child who learned to defend may become an adult whose first instinct is argument or justification. These patterns are not flaws. They are strategies that succeeded at some point in your life, and your nervous system held onto them as proof of survival. Understanding this is essential for communication mastery. When you know that your reactions are historical rather than personal, you stop attaching identity to them. A defensive response does not mean you are a defensive person. A shutdown does not mean you lack communication skills. A spike of emotion does not mean you are irrational. These are simply the echoes of earlier experiences replaying themselves until they are brought into awareness and consciously redirected. Communication is not only shaped by emotion but by physiology. The nervous system determines how much presence you have access to in any given moment. In a regulated state, you can interpret tone accurately, consider perspectives, access empathy, and articulate needs. When the system perceives threat, the body shifts into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. In these states, communication becomes filtered through survival. Words come out sharper or softer than intended. Meaning becomes distorted. The ability to listen narrows. The desire to escape or appease takes over. This happens even when no real danger exists, because the body is responding to remembered danger rather than the immediate environment. Awareness becomes the tool that interrupts automatic patterns. By learning to feel the shift in your body, the quickening breath, the tightening chest, the heat rising, the urge to defend or withdraw, you begin identifying the early indicators of activation. Recognizing this shift is not about stopping the reaction at first. It is about naming it internally. Once named, it becomes something you can work with rather than something that overruns the conversation. The emotional mind also influences perception. When triggered, the mind fills in missing information based on old narratives. If the old narrative is, "I am not understood," then neutral expressions may appear dismissive. If the old narrative is, "I must earn love," then any pause in communication may feel like abandonment. If the narrative is, "I am responsible for harmony," then even mild tension may feel like failure. The emotional mind believes these interpretations are accurate because they are familiar. Familiarity often feels like truth, even when it is not. The role of self-awareness is to separate sensation from meaning. You can feel disappointment without assuming rejection. You can feel tension without assuming conflict. You can feel fear without assuming danger. This separation creates space. Space is where conscious communication begins. Space allows you to respond from presence instead of reacting from memory. This module establishes the foundation required for every other communication skill you will learn. Without understanding your internal patterns, no technique, no expression framework, no listening method, no conflict tool, can hold. Techniques collapse when activation takes over. Awareness prevents that collapse by bringing the unconscious into visibility. The goal is not to eliminate emotional reactions. The goal is to recognize which version of you is speaking, the grounded adult self or the activated protective self. When the protective self leads, communication becomes reactive. When the grounded self leads, communication becomes intentional. Both parts exist. Both developed for valid reasons. Mastery comes from learning to discern them and to choose which one responds. This is the inner landscape of communication, the emotional blueprint, the physiological response system, the learned meanings that shape perception, and the awareness that allows you to work with them instead of being ruled by them.